make economic sense today might well make economic sense tomorrow. And let me take the example of Europe there. I think that the current target of Europe under the Kyoto Protocol is very easy to achieve with today's technology and with some degree of energy efficiency. But at the same time, European leaders have been talking about reducing Europe's emissions by 80% by the middle of the century. You cannot achieve an 80% reduction of emissions with today's technology and a little bit of energy efficiency. You need a fundamental change. Now, if you know that that is the longer-term perspective of politicians, to reduce emissions by 50 or 80% by the middle of the century, that can influence your investment perspective today, because even though you might have the sense that an investment in a certain power plant technology or vehicle technology or something else is difficult to justify from the economic perspective of today, that investment perspective might look very different if you place it in a longer-term context. And therefore, my experience is that investors want to understand the direction which policy is taking in order to be able to place investments in that longer-term context. So in other words, from a predictability point of view, an international treaty is, I believe, in the interest of the business community. The second reason why an international treaty is important from a business point of view is because it can provide you with stability. One of the things that is perhaps least predictable in life is what will happen after an election. Whether those elections are next week or next year or in 4 years' time, we've all seen the examples of governments dramatically changing the direction of policy. In Spain, not all that long ago, we saw the government basically abolish feed-in tariffs, which had been guaranteed for some time and which investments had been based on. We've seen subsidies and fiscal measures being withdrawn in many European countries and being questioned in the United States. We've seen Germany, after what happened in Fukushima, take a dramatic change of attitude on nuclear energy, which nobody would have been able to predict. And while national policies will change after elections and depending on national circumstances, one of the advantages of an international treaty is that it provides you more stability. If you look at the Kyoto Protocol, which is a far from perfect international legally binding treaty, we are still in the situation that only one country, Canada, has decided to withdraw from the Kyoto Protocol. All the other countries are still part and parcel of that treaty and still committed to meeting the targets which they agreed to under the Kyoto Protocol. So, in other words, although national politics may change, that longer-term stability provided by an international treaty is, I think, important to the business community. The third reason why I would argue that an international treaty is important to the business community relates to the level playing field. A level playing field is something which you hear a lot of people talk about all of the time, and what you of course all know is that a level playing field does not exist. A level playing field does not exist in the sense that there are no two countries where the electricity prices are the same, labor costs are the same, taxation systems are the same. In other words, in that sense, there is no level playing field. But what is important to the business community is a status quo, or rather having the confidence that countries will advance together. And that an international process creates transparency around how different countries are engaging in different ways. It will not mean that each country takes exactly the same target. It will not mean that each and every country adopts exactly the same measures. But one of the advantages, one of the transparency advantages of an international treaty is that you can examine what different countries are doing and can develop this sense of confidence that your competitors and that the business community around the world is moving to address this agenda item. So I think looking at an international treaty from a business point of view, yes, it is worth fighting for from the point of view of predictability, from the point of view of stability, and from the point of view of a level playing field.